It's hurrah for the Highlands again, and this time the head of Loch Lomond and the pass that runs right up to 600 feet, the Glen of Hiding. And immediately you get into it, you know you're in a very exciting place. Big waterfalls pouring off the hillsides, crags, secret glens running away through to the west, away through to Loch Fyne, and to the east, passes that take you through to the Trossachs. Road, railway and river come very close together there. And away up on the hillside, just above you, a very secret rock. Hello. When you've walked up the eastern side of Loch Lomond by the path of the West Highland Way, through the ruggedest walking in Loch Lomond side, it's a marvellous surprise to come down into the green flats in Glen Falloch. Ahead of you is a glen rising steeply into the highlands, but you feel almost in the lowlands. You're walking along what seems like a canal. In fact, it is a canal. It was built for people who used to come up Loch Lomond from the southern end at Balloch, sail up 24 miles of loch, and then from here they crossed over to an inn. The inn is called Inverarnon, and it was to this place people used to go to catch the stagecoach to the Highlands. And after the stagecoach had been running and the railway age came along, the first railway builders had a great idea. The Grand Junction Railway thought of making a terminus here in Glen Falloch so that you could sail up Loch Lomond, catch the train here, right across Rannoch Moor and across Loch Leven to Fort William. Well, that didn't come to pass, and neither did another project to run a train up the eastern side of Loch Lomond, beginning at Mary Hill and going through the Blaine Valley. Well, lots of things in Glen Falloch remind us of very ancient days, but there is one special stone which I'm going to look for. I've only a rough idea where it is. It's not even on the map. Clach-Bretan, the stone of the Britons in Glen Falloch, and it's taken me quite a search to find it. I wanted to find it because Clach-na-Bretan has a very special significance. It was the northerly limit of the Strathclyde Britons, who controlled all the territory from here, the middle of Glen Falloch, right down to the head of Loch Lomond, and beyond that again, right through the islands to the Lennox. The fortress was Dumbarton Castle, and their sphere of influence was such that it extended right down to Cumberland and Westmoreland. But it didn't extend through there, because that country, Dalriada, was the stronghold of the Scots, who had come from Antrim and set up a kingdom. And up there to the north were the Picts, named by the Romans. They certainly didn't manage to conquer them. Somehow or other this stone became the fulcrum of the battles between these early men. But it doesn't leap into history until the 14th century, when Robert the Bruce came here and sheltered below this stone. I'm going down to see where he sheltered. Well, the Picts and the Scots were united under Kenneth MacAlpin in the year 843, and Strathclyde became a very powerful place indeed. Of course, the fort of the Britons was Dumbarton Rock, but we don't hear of Robert the Bruce until we come to an independent Scotland. And Bruce fought a battle up there with the MacDougals in Strathfillan, where he suffered defeat. And he came here with 500 men and wondered what he would do next. And he took what was the line of retreat to the lowlands in these days, the easiest way down the eastern side of Loch Lomond. There was no road in these days, of course, so it must have been very hard going down through past the falls of Falloch into that rough tangle of shrubland and vegetation. Even today, it's very, very difficult for anybody who walks the West Highland Way. So the first road that we hear of being built didn't come until after 1740. The first road through Glen Falloch, built by General Caulfield. You've got to look for Caulfield's military road, but when you find it, it keeps going on. A track above the modern road and railway, which have got to run together in narrow Glen Falloch, so you're following a delightful contour line, a shortcut to Creanlarich, which will be the future West Highland Way path. This is the southerly limit of the Caledonian pine forest, and it's one of the distinctive features of Glen Falloch. For these old trees that have probably been growing here for at least 7,000 years, not the same ones, but descendants of the original Caledonian forest. And probably in the time when Bruce was up at the stone there, wolves were roaming here, and the brown bear was in the woods as well. So this is Glen Falloch, the Glen of hiding, and it certainly keeps many of its charms very secret. The average person speeding along the Glen in the train or by car, passing the old pine forest, up the river, foaming its way down from 600 feet to enter Loch Lomond, doesn't think of the stone up there, Clachnam the stone of the Britons, or Caulfield's old road that was built in 1742 and was one of the means of subduing the Highlands. Rob Roy would have hated that. He had been long dead by the time that road was built, and a very different Highlands was to come into being. Clachnam a stone of great character. When you follow the old track, climbing up, you come to Creanlarich, a great railway terminus as it were. Then ahead of you, you're into the drainage of the Tay, the river which rises as a wee burn on Ben Louis, where the road swings away left to Oban. But our route lies to the north, over another pass. And when you get to the top of this pass, the railway line to Fort William swings away to the right, and straight ahead of you, you see one of the shapeliest peaks in the Highlands, Ben Doran, the subject of one of the finest poems ever written in praise of Ben Doran. And the old road, Caulfield's old road, runs down just to the left of the railway and takes you down to Loch Tulla on the very edge of Rannoch Moor. And there you swing away on an old road into another world and a very, very ancient village. At Bridge of Orchy, the old road to the West Highlands crosses the new and bears off into the little-known country at the southwestern edge of Rannoch Moor. Well, this is Drumleaga. Drumleaga, a Gaelic word, Druum, a ridge. Lea means grey. Grey Gard, a field of the Grey Ridge. And this was a community of which we know something, although it's not in the map. Because the something we know came from a very great man, the greatest of all the Gaelic bards, who was born here in 1724, Donnacha Ban, Duncan Ban MacIntyre, the only man in history who is known as Fair Duncan of the Songs. Donnacha Ban had one thing in common with Robbie Burns. He was fond of his dram and a song. And down there in Inveroran was a very special inn because it was frequented by drovers coming from the north, from Skye and Lochaber, through Glen, the Devil's Staircase, across Rannoch Moor to that stance. And no doubt there was many a merry evening there with Donegal maybe making up songs and talking away, doing his work as a gamekeeper and forester by day and singing it off at night. And there was a girl there serving at the alehouse, Mary Banog, fair Mary. And he fell in love with Mary. But he was tormented because here was he, a poor man, Mary, an innkeeper's daughter in Moor, because the father was a bit of a bailiff and a factor. And Donegal knew there'd be a dowry of calves as well if he got her. So for 3 months he went about, hardly able to think about anything except Mary. And then he proposed. And the tender heart of Mary fell for Donegal. The two of them got married and had a wonderfully happy life. But almost more important was the release of songs for Duncan. He wrote 3 of the greatest love songs in the Gaelic language in praise of Mary. One to Mary on his wedding day, in which he starts from her head and goes to her feet, describing her perfections. Her breasts are like the pebble new washed on the beach.
Chai mit an chailer o kreines galants beweis gal schalig man goorst. Swami an ma hultje jor an parit and los na megan en oas. Gek favla hopar got tale de loop mi farst de loas. But du licht de graag gepraag ik jarig en dan tom fallen woon.
Song after song after song, and then in 20 years he moved to Edinburgh. And no doubt at that time there were more Gaelic speakers in Edinburgh than in the Highlands, because the great change had taken place. After the 45, Highlanders were no longer wanted in the Highlands. Sheep had come in. Duncan in his lifetime saw the disappearance of the things he loved. And that made him very sad, and it released some of this great poetry. Now the amazing thing is, for a man who couldn't write a line, who never signed his name in his life, that he could remember 6,000 lines of his own poetry, and maybe as many lines as other people's. And for posterity, we've got to thank a minister of Luss, Dr. Stewart of Luss, who wrote down the songs dictated to him by Duncan Ban. This was a man who translated the Bible into Gaelic, so we can be assured that these translations are good. Now, Duncan's life seems to have been a very happy one. He was a very uncomplicated man, but at 69, believe it or not, he went back into the army. He joined the Breadalbin Fencibles. I believe he was a bit of a quartermaster. He may well have been in the equivalent of the NAFE. But he served there, and he died in his 89th year. 89, still going strong. He was buried in Greyfriars beside Mary Banog. Duncan Ban saw this place for the last time when he was 70, and it inspired a marvellously nostalgic piece called Farewell to Bendoran, and in it he conjures up a picture of everything that made it for him. 555 lines, and it's been called a Pibrochen song, where you have a repetition 4 times of the melody, with the feeling for the red deer stags, the hinds with their spotted calves, the golden eagles nesting in the corries, the joy of being out there in a morning when the mist is swirling, the freshness of spring, the snow of winter, it's all there. But what Duncan could never have foreseen when he wrote these nostalgic lines was that this place would in time revert to being a deer forest, because the sheep failed. The people who'd got rich in the Industrial Revolution bought up these mountains. Today this is a great deer forest stretching west right to Loch Etive, and down there is Forest Lodge, a shooting lodge on the edge of Loch Tulla. The people who live down there are deer stalkers and gamekeepers. Inveroran is still an inn, but it's used by travellers. The new Glencoe Road, built in 1935, goes away east of the old road. But it's the old Glencoe Road crossing Rannoch Moor over Corrie Ba that is the road that delights the heart. And that's the road that I'm going to walk now. A road that Duncan Ban knew well. A road that I first travelled myself in a grocer's van somewhere in the early 30s before the Glencoe Road was built. So for me, it's a walk into history.
Yanin gut kaun is kraun is jarach naum khuriaran nyel is yanin marchach etrain mar khurash tel mialgnish varan gut kyo is ron is yalos neon ed varon ngek schavi udit veoken shol daran smichoni farm bife.
I wish I could read the poetry of Duncan Ban in the Gaelic, but I'm afraid I've left it too late. But I've got a great friend that I go wandering in the hills with who carries the volumes in his rucksack. And very often when we sit down at the burn, he'll not only start reciting the lines, but he gets his chanter out as well and plays me, skittles me a tune. And he took me to a place one day in Glen, where Duncan Ban lived for 10 years. And the tradition still remains in that glen that there was a place where the poet used to love to go and sit and think and sing. And we found it. It's beside the burn. It's like a natural armchair. So Pat sat in it, played his chanter and sang. And I must say I felt very close to Duncan Ban that day. But if you're in that neighbourhood and you keep walking north over the old Glencoe Road, you can't help feeling that the country hasn't changed. From Bridge of Orchy you can drive a car to here, but this is where the real walk across Rannoch Moor begins, over the old Drove Road to King's House. Well, the word Rannoch means watery, and we're about halfway in the western edge of the moor now, where this river comes out of that corrie, Corrie Ba, and it means the corrie of the cattle. And this is one of my favourite places because it's the biggest corrie in Scotland and it overlooks the 56 square miles of Rannoch Moor, the wildest and in some ways the most interesting piece of moorland in Scotland. And the best place to see it is from inside this corrie, and I'm going to turn off into it. Well, I've been looking forward to this for a while. It's getting a bit hot after walking over that road, but this is the River Ba. It's a burn that comes out of the big corrie there and flows into Loch Ba, right across Rannoch Moor, because Rannoch Moor is really, from the word watery, literally true. 3/4 of it is water. In fact, you could swim across Rannoch Moor, 11 miles of it, to Rannoch Station. People have done that. And in the severe winter of 1963, friends of mine actually skated across Rannoch Moor. That was a great trip. They went up the new road, left the car there, skated to Rannoch Station, had coffee there and skated back again. What a trip. Probably a once in every lifetime trip. Oh boy, that's good. This is a life. There's the corrie. If it wasn't for the clegs it would be perfect, because this is the time of year when they're really looking for the tourists. There's not much flesh here except mine. They know a bit of good stuff and they've got it. But thinking of the moor and its levelness, this is a remarkable thing. That 20 miles away there is the Atlantic, and yet most of the drainage of this moor goes to the east, through Loch Rannoch, through Loch Tummel, eventually into the Tay Valley, the main watershed of Scotland. So the great mattress of Rannoch Moor, this high raised bog, is very valuable to us in terms of water, the way it keeps up the lochs. The burns are low at the moment after a week or two of drought, and the bog is easier to walk on, and the bog is of particular interest because when you look at it closely, you find everywhere the bleaching skeletons of trees, the clear evidence that this was once a great forest. When was it a forest? Well, we know that in the 2nd century AD, Ptolemy called it the Caledonian Forest. Well, during that period that's elapsed between then and now, a tremendous layer of peat has built up, probably due to a variety of causes. The forest was burnt first by man to exterminate animals, then at a later stage the Atlantic climate seems to have worsened, and maybe even without the interference of man, the forest would have largely blown down. It was certainly hastened. So what we see is the moor now as an accumulation of peat stretching back 2,000 years with the clear evidence everywhere in it of this forest. The skeletons are all over the moor. And on the undulations of the moor, it's so level that you could walk over it for 11 miles more or less, and you're never more than 50 feet from the 1,000-foot contour. And you're walking through a great bouldery landscape with wee moranic knolls. It's in fact remarkably easy to walk over, but there's some poetry which I like very much that seems to me to crystallise the moor. It was written by Principal Sharp in the 19th century. He said, "Yea, a desert wide and wasted, washed by rain floods to the bones, league on league of heather blasted, storm-gashed moss, grey boulder stones." And that seems to me a great description of Rannoch Moor. That was a real wee paddle. I could sit here all day with that warm sun. I've got to get on. Sorry to leave this Corrie Ba. It's supposed to mean the corrie of the cattle, and probably it dates back to the time when the summer sheilings were here and when the drovers were going down over that old Glen road. And my route now is over the summit at 1450 feet and down to King's House Inn to resume the West Highland Way. A marvellous walk. Rannoch Moor, God-forsaken, man-forsworn, but in a summer's day, an idyllic place. In a winter's day, it can be a place of death, with the winds screaming across from the east or west and no shelter at all. And if you want to escape from it, it's possible to climb over the Devil's Staircase. And if you're a really good walker, you can continue right through the hills again and come into Fort William by the finest gorge in Scotland, the gorge of Glen. And that's where we go in the next programme. Cheerio for now.